Rod Emory here from Emory Motorsports. I've been racing and restoring Porsches for just over 30 years. In the workshop, we build a few different types of cars, our Emory Outlaws, Specials, RS, and then our regular restorations or preservations of cars that we come across. This is a 1957 Emory Outlaw vintage race car that has been a race car most of its life, dating all the way back to the 50s and 60s. This car competed in a series of races that are known as the Speedster Wars here on the West Coast. There were about 20 Speedsters that raced all up and down the coast of California at various events, and this is one of the cars that survived those races and ended up being purchased by a good friend of mine in the 90s, Ted Rogers. I met Ted at the vintage races up in Seattle, and he was racing this car. It was powder blue, and it was in pretty rough shape. You could tell that it had, inches of Bondo all over the place. So once Ted decided it was time to really bring this car back to its glory days and in good shape, he sent it down to my workshop in about 1999, 2000, and we disassembled the car and had it media blasted. Well, we quickly realized that this car had been through a lot of races, a lot of bumps, a lot of nudges, and as you can see in these photos, just about every panel had been banged around, added to, and brazed up. Well, it was a perfect candidate for us to go through and rebuild. And the goal with this car was to build a car that Ted could vintage race, but also one that he could take to various rallies and still drive on the street. So the first thing that we did was got the sheet metal all back to shape. In fact, I put a new nose on the car, new tail panels, new fenders, and in fact, this was a car that my grandfather, Neil Emory, who used to have Valley Custom Shop, he sat in his stool and worked with me as I was hammer welding all of these panels on. It was really a great experience for me, spending that time with him in my workshop, kind of the last years of his life. One of the other things that we did to this car is I decided to go ahead and build a side tonneau cover, rear tonneau, and headrest. So the headrest is made out of aluminum. The side and rear tonneau main panel are made out of sheet metal. And then I wanted to fit a spider style windshield to the car so that it could run as a single cockpit configuration, but also still build it so that it could run the stock Speedster windshield. So once all the sheet metal work, new floors, rust repair, chassis stiffening, and everything were done on the car, we then sealed the car and started doing body work. As you can see here in dark blue primer, one of the things that I like to do is shoot the base primer a similar color to the color the car is going to ultimately be. That way, anytime you get any chips or nicks, the primer is the same color. One of the things that we did on the car in these two photos, you can see right underneath where the shift coupler is, I put a center adjuster in the car that would allow me to put the car on scales and weight balance it. And the nice thing is that you can adjust the ride height, but you can also weight balance the car, and then it's just covered up by the little cover for the shifter, and you don't even know that it's there, but gives the car some great adjustability. After I painted the car, did the big white meatballs on the side, then we brought it into the workshop and started assembling the car. Since this car is set up to race at events like the Monterey Historics, Rennsport Reunion, various events, we left the car drum brake, but I was able to come up with a set of like RS60, 60 millimeter finned brakes for the car. And once the car was completely assembled, weight balanced, ready to go, Ted Rogers came and picked it up with his trailer, and we were able to start taking it out to the track and getting it all set up. Here's a few detail shots of the car. You can see I hand hammered a set of reverse louvers in the car, as well as did flip over deck lid hinges, and set the car up with lots of very cool details. And Ted then went on to race the car really all over the West Coast. He's competed in various Sovereign CSRG events, Monterey Historics a number of times, Rennsport Reunion, and then a few years ago he sent the car back down to me here to the workshop in California, and my wife Amy and I spent a little time driving it around. In fact, we drove it to the very first Luftgekühlt event that Patrick Long had, and then after that we brought it into the workshop, and Ted asked me to go ahead and finish the concept that we had when we were first building the car to fit a hardtop to the car. Now, doing a hardtop to this car, I wanted to do something unique and different, and one of the goals was to make it so that the hardtop would go on and off without removing the headrest, tonneau cover, roll bar, etc. So we found an original glass bar hardtop, and it needed a tremendous amount of work because the fiberglass on these is deteriorating. So we ended up grinding it down, putting new layers of fiberglass, but then we reshaped the rear area of the hardtop to make it hump over the tonneau cover. And the other thing that was required then was that we had to make a new mold for the rear window. And so Aircraft Windshield, that makes all of our acrylic windows, then made a plaster mold so that they could bend and form a rear window that was going to go over the headrest. So once the hardtop got painted, we started to fit that hardtop to the car, and it wasn't an easy task because every little piece, every seal, everything had to be remade and designed to work in this configuration. Once I had it all working the way that I wanted, then I glued the headliner in place and then started fitting the windows, and really just taking a lot of patience. In fact, my wife was with me all through the night one night as we were working on trimming, fitting the window, and ultimately roping it in. So grateful to have a wife that will hang out with me in the shop and help me in times of need, because doing something like this by myself, there was no way I could have roped that window in by myself the first time and trimming it. Once the rear window was in place, then I started making all of the side windows and vent windows, etc. Luckily, these hardtops are now reproduced by a friend of mine, Russ Rodriguez at Fiber Steel, and some of the little hardware pieces, latches, he's remade those pieces. So I was able to get some of that hardware from him and make it all work, even though this configuration is different than the normal configuration of the hardtop. But I'm really happy with the way the whole thing turned out, and the car now is running around with a hardtop that is removable in full Speedster windshield configuration, and Ted Rogers is enjoying this car up in the Pacific Northwest, up in Oregon, so you'll catch it at some of the historic races as well as different rallies and events. Really a special car, and been a fun one to be involved in the last 20 years, having put my hands on it the first time in the late 90s, doing the restoration in the early 2000s, and then having it come back so that I could build this hardtop for it. Thank you for digging into all the details with me here on the cars that we build at Emory Motorsports. Make sure you also follow us on Instagram at Rod Emory, so that you can get a behind-the-scenes look as we're building the cars. Until next time, take care.